guys, welcome to the next episode of Ashley's Digital China. Today I'm bringing you another fantastic guest, and we have with us today a serial entrepreneur and investor, a founder and chair of New Chic Capital's family office, Jennifer Cheng-Lo. Jennifer, welcome on the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here, Ashley. We've been talking about this for a while, and I'm so excited to begin a dialogue with you on what's new in East and West and what we can bring to China.
Absolutely. And Jennifer is running her single family office with a focus on impactful tech, Web3 and AI. Beyond all that, she's a prominent business influencer and internationally acclaimed classical concert pianist. So guys, we are up for a treat. And we're going to jump straight into that, Jennifer, because I want to get so much insights from you on all sorts of things. And we're going to start with Hong Kong as a finance center. We're going to expand and talk about the family offices as a concept, entrepreneurship and impact investing, and a lot more. So let's start with Hong Kong. You are based here in this World Financial Center. So first of all, traditionally, this city has been seen as the financial hub here in Asia. But with recent changes in the global and local landscape, let's say, do you believe that Hong Kong still retains that status as a premier financial center in the region and one of those globally?
I am actually very confident that Hong Kong is still going to be retaining its status as long as it sort of strives. All of us need to strive to maintain that status, because we can't just take it for granted that we're just going to have this status in perpetuity. So I think there are a lot of global forces, or a lot of macroeconomic forces. We had that black swan event, COVID, that really derailed a lot of cities and countries, not just Hong Kong. And because of different geopolitical forces, there's different sort of tailwinds and a different sort of technological upheaval and disruption, a lot happening at the same time. But I think as long as Hong Kong can manage to stay relevant, it will be able to stay in the center of things. And a lot of that, I think, resides upon something that we've talked about a lot in the past, really being able to bridge East and West, keep that open door sort of going, keep the dialogues going, keep trade going, embrace new technology. A lot of other factors come into play, but I'm pretty confident that Hong Kong, we're a gritty set of people. And it's a really melting pot city with, amazing expats and folks from China, folks from Asia, folks from the West, just all kind of congregating here. So I'm really confident that we can, put our minds together and really continue to make Hong Kong a forefront global city.
Well, that's fantastic. And in the past couple of months, and probably in the past 1 year, we've seen a lot of things shifting towards Singapore, especially when it comes to finance and the attractiveness of Hong Kong as the global investment hub has a little bit downgraded, right? So how do you compare the dynamism that Singapore brings today and what Hong Kong still has to offer with, as you said, bridging East and West and specifically giving access to and from mainland China?
That's a very good question you asked. A lot of people ask about, the dichotomy of, the Singapore versus Hong Kong. For me, I don't think it's a winner takes all market. I actually see Singapore as kind of like our sister city. And I see a lot of other cities. One of the things I like to tell my partners, and a lot of things I try to embrace in my business life, is I say, collaboration is the new competition. So I think as long as our respective cities can retain our differentiations, our different various competitive advantages. One of the things about Singapore is that it's really kind of the heart of Southeast Asia. And then Hong Kong is the heart, and historically has been, of East and West, and also having that sort of gateway into China and the other cities that are also rapidly arising. Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, a lot of these are top tier cities as well. And I think as long as all of us can cross-pollinate all the best we have in each city, one thing I would say about, Singapore and Hong Kong, we've always had this kind of a friendly rivalry. People say, Singapore, the food, the hawker food is so good there. And we say, Hong Kong, we have great egg tart, we have great great dim sum. We have great Chinese cuisine. In Singapore, you can't beat like laksa there. I'm not going to say, Hong Kong does laksa better than Singapore. But I think one of the things that we also have to remember is that a lot of investors, a lot of institutionals, a lot of family offices, we like to do what I'll refer to later on as diversify. We don't like to put all our eggs in one basket. No one puts all their money in one geographic region. No one puts all their money in one bank. So if you're, for example, wanting to do more trade and investments in Singapore, then of course you would put some resources there. Same with Hong Kong, same with Greater China, same with, US, Europe, and so forth. So I think each city has its respective traits, but I'm a little bit biased. I do love Hong Kong because Hong Kong is home Kong for me. And I will vouch for Hong Kong any day, although some of my best friends do live in Singapore.
And guys, just to make it clear, this is not a sponsored post because right now we're sitting there talking and selling Hong Kong hard. This is not a sponsored post. This is an honest opinion from a person in the industry. Fantastic. Let's move on and talk about the topic very close to you. You're in a day in, day out, the family offices. And we've all heard about it, but nobody or very few people actually understand what is a family office. So could you explain to the audience what is a family office and the unique benefits that it provides the high net worth families?
Oh, for sure. So a lot of people, when they think of the term family office, they think, oh, it's a family who's sitting in an office, or oh, someone has a family business and it's a family office. That's a misnomer because actually the definition of a family office is in the West, it's something like the threshold of you have to have 30 to 50 million liquidity, net worth, or if you're to sell off a business. In Asia, I think the threshold's a little higher. I think you have to have about 100 million liquidity net worth if you were to sell off a business and sell off sort of like everything that you would have to have a net worth of at least 100 million to be USD to be considered an actual family office. There's also different kinds of family office. Single family office is sort of basically the family itself has enough resources at its disposal to act like a single family. Multi-family office, which is an MFO, means that there's multi-families getting together and doing sort of a strategy together, maybe doing co-investments together. And New Chic Capital Family Office. So I named it New Chic because I moved around a lot. I was a new girl, so it's called New Chic. I started New Chic because I had a rather prominent exit over a decade ago, and it was in the e-commerce space. It was an IPO, which led to a few years after that, some of my partners did an ICO for it, and it became a very prominent Web3 company known as Crypto.com. And one of the reasons why I think I started my family office after the IPO is because family offices are also set up for next gen planning and taxes. Because if you're going to have an exit, then you need to really think about, what am I going to do? So family offices are set up so that we can do allocations, meaning invest in different verticals or industries. And we do a combination of, I do a combination, some family offices do it different ways, but I do a combination of obviously traditional investments. But my bread and butter is looking at venture capital, private equity, directly investing, as well as investing alongside fund managers and allocating to institutional funds as well. So I kind of do a hybrid approach. And so family office literally means, like if people think about VC funds, private equity funds, institutional funds, there's a limited amount of LPs, meaning limited partners who can participate in the fund. So the people who are investing in funds are typically ultra high net worth individuals, which are called UNHWI, and family offices. So I hope I was able to define that for you because everyone is always like, what's a family office? So
that's a beautiful definition. And
is.
One thing that jumps out at me immediately is that you said at the very beginning that in the rest of the world, you need to have a net worth of about 30 to 50 million. But here in Asia, you've highlighted that it's a little bit higher. Well, it's not a little bit higher, it's like 3 times higher. You need to have at least 100 million US dollars in net worth in order to qualify to be called a family office. Why is that?
I think we kind of set the bar a little bit higher in Asia. And then there's another thing that I think we do. I mean, I actually, when I first met you, I was just like, wow, not only do you speak perfect Mandarin. You speak it like very well with like in a very authentic accent. We go the extra mile. But I think one of the reasons why is because Hong Kong has always been such a center of finance and everything. And to the point where a lot of people, I think we naturally have a lot of grit, entrepreneurship. You hear all these stories of people making small tailoring shops, becoming factories, people manufacturing and then doing production line, people just rapidly becoming very efficient. So we have what we call already legacy of generational wealth. It is one of the oldest cities where there is old money. And one of the statistics is that actually 1 out of every 4 or every 5 people on the Hong Kong side is a millionaire. And then on the Kowloon side is actually 1 out of every 10 to 20. So if you have all that coming around and then family offices are kind of sitting at the top of the pyramid, I shouldn't say pyramid, it sounds like a pyramid scheme, but sitting at the top of the food chain, and then their investments and allocations trickle down to funds, and then the funds then allocate to startups and companies, and then kind of cross-pollinate the ecosystem. So I would say there can't be that many family offices. I mean, there are certainly numerous, but for them to be kind of pillars of the ecosystem, it can't be like everybody is one. And to really, I think, build generation wealth and be able to sustain it, family offices have the very good investment philosophy. They have to have next gen planning, education, succession planning, a lot of things that we can, cover more of in the future or later when we talk about, our strategies for, fundraising and investing.
Yeah, absolutely. And in that relation, I think one slogan could be "Crazy Rich Asians Exist." So it's all about Hong Kong, Singapore, Shanghai, generational wealth that you're talking about. And of course, there's a very interesting book which is called The Dragon Network, that was written a couple of, I think maybe a decade or so ago, which talks about exactly the generational wealth flying and flowing out of imperial China back in the day and then going all across Asia, and how these dragon networks are still very strong today. And a little bit in the same direction, we have obviously an entertaining interpretation of all that in the books and later on movies, Crazy Rich Asians. And we have it in a more serious kind of lane when we talk about the actual family offices investment and the fact that, well, Asia is wealthy and Asia is in many ways, again, the future, and it does have the old money. Beautiful. Moving on to the
fun fact though. Yeah. Fun fact. I read the script and I was originally up for screen testing for Crazy Rich Asians. I ended up kind of not. I know, right? Tidbit about me, but I just when I read it, and you're actually so right. There's all these like references to things that we see right in Hong Kong when they talk about the Saddle Club, that is Jockey Club, and they talk about the Lock Club, that is Key Club. There's so many things I think that are they reference in pop culture, but that are actually grounded in reality. So I'm actually really glad that you said that, because there is this culture of and you're right, you're absolutely right. There's still a dragon network. There's that bamboo network, and not only has it spread to Asia, I would say there's like a very pan-Asian culture internationally. You'll find pockets of not just Asian food in every city, but you'll find a lot of innovation and entrepreneurship in different cities, just waiting to, I was in Paris and I met a bunch of Asian entrepreneurs over there just recently. And I'm like, wow, how is that possible? Everyone is just, building, and there's just, it's amazing how global everybody is right now, and locally focused, but global.
And I think that's a beautiful link to the next question on the mindset, right? So as you've mentioned earlier, here in Asia, the standard is sometimes a little bit higher, right? Here in Asia, typically the ambition, and there's obviously good things about that, and there's obviously some, flip sides to it, when mothers, dragon and tiger moms put a lot of pressure on kids and whatever. But basically expectations are high, ambitions are high, money, right? I mean, in China, we have a god of money, Tai Sheng, right? Nowhere else in the world people pray to the god of money. Here we do, and this is not even frowned upon.
We do
this
pray
is
to the
normal,
god,
right? You meet people, you wish them Happy New Year, and all you say is, I hope that, you're going to get rich. So all those things, there is a desire to be successful professionally, and that also is translated in wealth. Wealth is, in general, I would say, compared to many other cultures, is considered something positive rather than negative, and something to be avoided and to be ashamed of. For example, in Europe, in a lot of places, again, because of the probably certain history or the way the money was acquired or, various things, people prefer to keep very, very low profile. And if they come from generational wealth, it is actually a point to be kind of ashamed of, not to build upon. So what I want to ask is, what do you think is the mindset of modern Asians, Pan-Asia, or be it Greater China in particular, that makes them potentially, I don't know, more or less successful, more or less entrepreneurial, more or less, kind of investment driven today?
I think what you just identified is actually really, really good distinction between how Asians and Westerners view wealth. I think actually even amongst next gen entrepreneurs and investors, a lot of us are struggling with, how do I, it's almost an identity question. What is my relation with money and wealth? How do I define my own success? And I think a lot of times people realize financial success. I think we're increasingly realizing it's nothing to be ashamed of. Financial success, financial stability, these are all things that people should strive for and aspire towards. And I think the other reason why a lot of friends I see who are both, I think, intrapreneurial, meaning they're running family businesses, but also entrepreneurial, starting their own things, is that we realize, one of the ways to continue on and have a sustainable future is for us not only to continue upon historical legacy, but build new things for the future. And I think that mindset, it's so important. I call it a growth mindset because it is something I see everyone more or less embracing. And everyone is less old school now, because now it's not like, I came from money, I am having lunch every day, I am doing nothing with my life. Now it is very, it used to be frowned upon before to say oh, wow, I'm going to business. Now it's like, and even as a woman, right? It used to be like, you just stay at home, you take care of the house, you obey your husband. And now everyone is saying you can wear many hats. You can, I'm a creator, entrepreneur, investor hybrid. And one of the reasons I think I'm able to do that, I think generationally our attitudes are shifting to really embrace you know what? We can be leaders. We can, really start making impactful, choices that are going to define our collective future. And we really need to take responsibility for that, right? And I think that's something that our generation is doing. We want to obviously respect history and tradition, but also embrace technology and change, not be afraid of it, and then implement it as tools so that we can just go forth and continue, for lack of a better word, human tech. Because I think that's what we are all want to retain, is that our sense of humanity.
Choices, choices, choices. You said it. And what you are choosing to do with that wealth, with that beautiful energy, and with that creativity, passion, entrepreneurship, excellent mind, you are choosing impact investment. So let's look into that. What is impact investment? It is a term that in generally gained a lot of traction recently. And for some, it is still not clear. So is it that we invest in charity projects that might never pay back? Is it about, giving money to some struggling communities? Impact investment is also very often considered a fluff, right? So can you describe the significance of, first of all, what is impact investment, its significance here in Asia, and how it differs from the traditional investment strategies or process?
Sure. Again, great question, because I think a lot of people think impact investment, is that philanthropy?
Yeah.
Is that charity? You're just giving money away? And no, it's actually, it's impact investing, because the term investing is there. You basically need to generate an ROI. You can't just sit there and say I am just, donating some money to a charity. One of the things about impact investing too is there's a lot tied in these days with SDGs, ESG, a lot of tied in with goals to not just add to the bottom line, but make the world a better place. So some of our impact investments include food tech, the future of food, the future of work, ed tech, things that are actually improving the quality of life and actually moving the needle and generating a return, and a sustainable return. Because there's that saying, you don't want to just, obviously you have to give the fishermen fish while you're teaching them to fish. You can't just, let fishermen starve. So I believe in a combination of both, charitable giving, but I like impact investing in that I think, we can't be afraid of even things like one of our companies that actually does quite well, it has done quite well, is a company called Climate X. Yeah. And that is impact, because it's an algorithm. It really defines what kind of climate sort of implications are along with each project. We were lucky enough to be a part of the earliest round and topping up into the pre-seed and the seed, which Deloitte led. But there are also other projects, for example, that in our portfolio, for example, Globalify. That one is a search engine, and it's connecting some of the best impact investors and impact startups together. And when I say impact, I mean they have to make an impact. It can't just be like, hi, I am an example of not an impact investment would be like, I mean, I like coffee, but I don't think coffee shop is necessarily an impact investment. If it's something that is kind of changing the paradigm or part of the new shift, then I would say that is impactful. But at the same time, you have to look at the implications for society at large. So for example, if you're investing in AI, sure, that is impactful. It's impactful and early tech, innovative tech. But if you're investing in AI that is doing something that's nefarious, it's like an evil kind of robot, then that's not impactful.
Cambridge Analytica.
There was one of our yes, and then exactly right. And then there's actually one other investment I was very proud of. We had an IPO during the pandemic. It was in the cancer vaccine therapeutic space, and they were one of the first ones using the mRNA technology. And then we topped up our investment then into the parent company, which has a lot of pharma tech moonshots. That one's called Cambrian Bio, but that one's been backed by a lot of famous investors. We were so lucky to get in early and then also bring in a lot of Asian partners to also co-invest alongside us. And it's just amazing because we'll be having Alzheimer's drugs. We'll be having heart drugs. We'll be having things that are impactful. So I think for impact investment, also it has to have that sustainability. It can't just be a flash in the pan and it's just something that's a fad. So you have to think about not just the sustainability in terms of environmental and to the world, but the sustainability and viability as a business. So there are a lot of facets at play. I'm so glad you asked me what impact investing is. I still think that it's good. Like, later on, I might have a little treat for you, might play a little bit of piano outro, but I used my piano for good to raise money for charity, like raise several million for charities, for women empowerment, for COVID relief, for frontline workers, for war-stricken countries. And I did that because, you still have to do other impactful things alongside, because companies take time to build. It's not like you invest in them and then tomorrow it's like solved. Companies on average take, 5 to 9 years and then more to, get their exit, become sustainable, and to then keep growing and propagating to the future. Apple wasn't built overnight, right?
Absolutely.
So, maybe it was, but, it takes time for iterations to keep happening.
Absolutely. And there are still a lot of people that believe that, big business or successful business is not keeping our best hour as of societal, hour as of individual, hour as of, kind of the singularity, best interest at heart. But the business is focused on making money. And the question then goes into impact investment pretty much is about guilt-free investing, which means I invest into a product that is good. It's a good product. It's good for me, it's good for society, and it's good for environment, right? Well, one way. And on top of all that, it needs to be a good business, which means it needs to make money, it needs to have sustainable growth, etc. Do these unicorns actually exist? I mean, this is not a unicorn in the sense of this is $1 billion business, but do these companies actually exist? How difficult it is to spot one or to raise one? You don't spot them, maybe you create them. Like how to actually come upon a good impact investment and how to pick the project to work on.
That's actually an amazing question you just asked. And I love how Ashley, I think I naturally just vibe with you because you're so entrepreneurial minded. You're so creative. And this is actually engendering a really positive discussion. We need more women leaders and those who are leading the charge for this kind of dialogue, right? We're sitting at this proverbial table and we're having this really important discussion. So it's actually really hard. I've actually been really lucky. I have more than a dozen unicorns in my portfolio. I'm waiting on several exits. I've been exited several times myself as both an entrepreneur and investor. And one of the things I think is that when you look at companies, you not only look at the change they're trying to do, you're looking at what problem they're trying to solve. Is it a big enough problem? Is it a head-banging pain point for enough people that you're kind of really moving the needle for in a seismic way. The other thing I look for is the team, the chemistry. Do they have that DNA? And then also, do they have that grit? Do they have that, like, I fell down, I'm going to pull myself back up. And then, I'm learning. I failed. I'm going to learn from that failure and then pick myself back up, because that's called grit. That's called perseverance. And the other thing I look for is that vision. Can they really focus on and define that vision, stay, do things that are mission critical? And the thing that about startups is actually what's not on their side is not just the funding, but time. Because there's never enough time in a day. One of my TEDx talks was how time is the new currency. There really isn't enough time to just keep kind of spacing and this and that and throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. Because it's really do or die for startups and companies in general when they don't evolve and kind of just really learn how to harness that spirit of innovation. So for me, I like to spot, like you were saying, like obviously some unicorns can be groomed. So I like to spot the unicorns, herd the unicorns gently. Maybe they're baby unicorns or unicorns in the making, and then really kind of train up the unicorns. We might obviously some of the companies that I've taken under my wing, I'll advise them, and then when they're fundraising ready, then at that point I might then invest in them. I use that period for due diligence, because you're right, you have to diligence everyone and the relationship very carefully. And then at that point, if I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to double down more, I might start introducing some interested and relevant co-investors. And then now with like new technologies, like the, for example, that search engine that I just mentioned, it'll be easier to curate the right mix of people at the table. Because I think a lot of times now, you're a content superstar. A lot of times it's not just about the content, but about the curation. And the curation is very important to building an intrinsically solid portfolio foundation as well as an investment philosophy.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I believe that everybody who is in this business have their own process, but yours is very structured and very balanced. So guys, if you are interested in building those unicorns, take a note. And this is a beautiful bridge also to the next topic, which is fundraising and investor relationships. You've just now mentioned that you've had over 12 exits, including IPOs and including unicorns. So obviously a very prominent and very experienced professional in this space. What strategies do you then recommend for startups here in Asia, here in Hong Kong, in Greater China, looking to attract investors to raise funds in this current economic climate, which many say is, wow, the worst in years? I mean, US economy is going great, but in reality, are we, heading towards another recession? Are we already in the recession, or is China dead? Is Hong Kong slow, etc.? What would be your strategies?
Wow. I love how you ask such variegated questions, because then I can sort of, kind of go off on each sort of aspect of it. It's an excellent question, because I don't think China is dead, for sure. China is very much alive and kicking. There's that spirit. The US economy is humming along. I do think that we were actually, a lot of people said, when is this recession coming? I actually think we were in a recession the whole time during COVID. We actually just didn't necessarily realize it, because, everyone was closing borders. Trade was just, slowing to a trickle. People were just, kind of redefining themselves in terms of, what do I want to do with my life? Do I focus on my family now? Or what I'm going to do with my career? And people were just thinking like, there was actually a lot of new people deciding, do I take the entrepreneurial leap? Do I go find a job? Are there jobs? Everything is getting automated. So I think there's a lot of things just happening at the same time. We're at a very interesting sort of inflection point, I think, in our history. And I think right now, for startups, if you've survived, if you were started pre-COVID and you survived, that's a sign that you will continue to survive. That's actually a good sign. You're still alive. And then, you're still alive. But what I would advise startups to do, as well as fund managers, because a lot of people don't understand too that fund managers also do fundraising. So I'm glad that you do, because they had to raise funds to be able to invest in startups. Yep. So fund managers are also very entrepreneurial, especially, first time fund managers. And when you talk about relationships are intrinsic because it's all based around trust. It's a very small world in the investment and the entrepreneurial community. If you have a reputation in one city, it sometimes glides over to another, because right now we're living and breathing on a global stage. I mean, with the proliferation of social media over the past decade, it's not like we can, all sit there and hide under rocks and that we don't have reputations to keep intact, right? So one of the things I think is very, very important is that for startups or first-time fund managers or companies looking to raise money, one of the things I say is to focus on build. There's a new concept called in Web3, and also it's extended to Web2, called building in public, meaning you are building with transparency. You're saying, hey, I'm setting out to solve this problem. And then you also take feedback from, your customers. Earlier you were saying, hey, it's important that we support the right startup. Actually, all of us, I know you, Ashley, you're an entrepreneur and investor hybrid like me, but a lot of us who say, oh, I'm not an investor, you actually are. When you are using your money to support a business or support an organization, or you're, buying something as a consumer, that is actually a micro investment. And so there's a lot of, crowdfunding platforms. There's other things. There's a lot of people learning to become angel investors, people getting to the next level. And there's a generational wealth shift right now, so that a lot of people who didn't think they are family offices, they're actually family offices, and also creating, like for me, I created my own family office because I had that, a sizable exit. And I think one of the things that we can do to really continue to educate ourselves is what I do is I try to surround myself with people who are smarter than me. I was dying to be on your podcast for a while because I said, hey, everything is so topical. When I watch your channel, I get to learn, this aspect of doing business, this aspect of investing. What can we do more as women? But I think it is imperative that for startups that are fundraising, you have your MVP, meaning your minimum viable product. Yeah. You keep those relationships from the get-go, because you never know if someone is going to help you down the road. It's relationship focused first. So even if, like, for example, there's an investor that is interested, if it's not the right time for funding, you just keep in touch with them and say, like, hey, we'll be ready for funding then, and also to be fully transparent. If you are going for a fundraising, then you have to say, oh, this is going to be our use of funds. Here's our traction to date. These are all figures that you need to be very transparent about. Otherwise it crops up in due diligence. And I would say execute as much as possible before going to look for funding, because actually after you have investors, you have a bunch of people to be accountable for. Yeah. Actually, with my exit, we didn't even actually raise funds because we were so revenue driven until the actual IPO. So I'm not saying that everyone is just, you don't raise money, you just go straight to IPO. That's just what happened. I was lucky, knock wood, that happened to me. I'm going to knock some wood. But I think what we have to remember is, you have to be ready and you have to take that leap, and you can't just stand there at the edge of the pool. Oh, I dropped something. Stand there at the edge of the pool and stare at the water and not jump in. You have to be ready at any given point to be talking to investors and customers and partners and business partners and your team.
Yeah, so ultimately focus on your business, because I've also seen a lot of startups out there that have this idea. And I mean, in today's world, I do not know what, Jen, your opinion is, but in my opinion, in my world, idea is worth nothing. It's all, I mean, we all have $1 million ideas every 2 days, but it's really all about execution. Are you able to put that team together? Are you able to consistently execute on the quality? Are you able to actually solve the ever-changing problem of the market, etc.? So the idea that we can come up with a concept and then go and ask for money, and then with this money kickstart, I think it's, well, if not completely dead, then it's mostly dead. You need to be just doing it. You need to be in it. And then obviously, as you said, focusing on, having the viable product, having the, market, having the growth plan, having the right team in place. And when you're ready for bigger things, for bigger market, for bigger steps, you come in and say, hey guys, I need money for that. Not I need money to start, to bring my idea to life. And I also believe, and I think that's where we are quite similar, I also believe very strongly that money is nothing but energy. It is energy that is given to you in order to realize your project. So in other words, the bigger your project, the bigger your actual thing that you are creating, the bigger the money, or so to say, the energy that will be, kind of given to you, passed on to you, that you will acquire in order to realize it. So, right.
You're saying, oh my gosh, I like my sister from another mister right now. I couldn't have said it better myself, because you're right. It's actually energy. And if your company is magnetic, it will attract more energy. Right. And it's almost like if you're, I liken it to dating. You don't want to start, being fundraising and saying like, oh, I have this idea. And then talk to potential advisors and investors, say, hey, can you help me put together my team? Can you help me do this? Can you help me do that? And then I need just money to like make my idea fly. And anyone can be an idea person. We can just sit there and have ideas. And, if I were paid $1 for every idea I have ever had, I would have another wad of cash sitting around. Right. And it's just, and the other thing is that everyone can have the same idea. It's about who can execute. You just said it so perfectly, Ashley. It's you can't just sit there and just be like, oh yes, everyone spoon feed me and it's just going to magically happen. And you're right. When you raise funds, there has to be a purpose for those funds. Are you doing a major expansion? Are you launching a giant partnership and SKUs? Are you gearing up for, 2 years away, we're going to have an IPO, and then we're going to do an ICO, and we're going to SPAC or something? There has to be a roadmap. There has to be a reason. It can't just be like, I thought of a great idea. I'd like to invent this. Can you give me money?
Yeah.
And it just doesn't work that way, because, there are so many, I'm so glad you hit the nail on the head. And then I just really want to reemphasize that, what Ashley just said, everybody pay attention. It's beyond the idea. It's idea plus execution plus team plus vision plus traction plus likability. That's the other thing. If you are talking to an investor and you're like, or a potential advisor, and you're like, hi, I'd like to pick your brain. I don't want to offer you any value. Your hand is out to take. Your hand should be out to give. My hand is always out to give first. I'd love to give advice, give help, give value where I can. And it's not just to sit there and say like, you're an investor, give me money, because that is we need to be attracted by your magnetism, your charisma, your idea, and what you've done so far.
Yeah.
Right. So I love, you just hit the nail on the head.
And as you just said earlier, relationships and reputation so important, because ultimately we all are first humans, and only then investors, business owners, consumers, or whatever you want to call that. We're all humans. And ultimately we humans want to do business with those we know, like, and trust. How are they going to know you? That's your question number one. Why are they going to like you? And not everybody's going to like you, but, be yourself. So people will discover the genuine you, and they will connect with the genuine you, and they will be people that like you and trust you. Why would they trust you? Because you need to show up every day. As you said, you need to have, a clear plan. You need to have, a personal brand or some community that you are showing up for them every day. That means you are trustworthy. You're not going to disappear with my money or with my whatever ideas or whatever else. So people do business with those who know, like, and trust, and reputation plays a very important role. Ultimately, reputation is all about what do people say about you when you're not in the room, right? And here in Asia, at least, and I believe, again, it's a global village. Actually, around the world, it's all the same. People talk about their community, their industry all the time. So the word travels. Do you have a couple of maybe 2, 3, 4 pointers or tips how to actually keep and develop the investor relationships?
It's an excellent. I love how you segued into that, because the relationship is paramount. So what I liken it to is almost dating. Okay. So you're not going to run around and just, date tons of people and just go out on oh yes, Tinder, they are. Tinder, Bumble. Yeah. Like a lot of these, it's true. Right. I think one of the things that is most attractive about people wanting to build a relationship with you is if they see your value, you have that reputation built up beforehand. So right now, for example, the CTO of one of my portfolio companies, he's 19 years old and he has a great track record. He and the founder, they were mentored by Tim Draper, and they were just they have a, that likability factor. They just, get the things done. He might go code for 10 hours, 20 hours straight. He just gets, what you said before, showing up and doing the work. So as long as you have built that reputation of showing up consistently, being a reliable person, showing up and doing the work. If you're, for example, meeting investors, the best way is actually through a warm intro. Yeah. So if there's someone you admire, someone who is advising you, someone in your friend circle already, you can ask them, oh, there's this person I really want to be introduced to. And you can get an introduction to them. But then be warned, you don't want to dilute your value by, wow, there's fireworks going on behind me. I don't know. Have I said a big gem? I don't know if you saw that just now. That was amazing special effect, Riverside. I said something that caused a big spark, pyrotechnics. But I think if you're getting an intro from someone, then be very thankful for the intro. Maybe like keep them in the loop. Maybe take, the investor that you want to meet or the advisor you want to meet with your friend out to lunch or dinner or coffee, right? Show that you are also giving value and try to be of service. One of the startups that I started advising and then invested in, they were trying to help me with something. I remember like my contacts and everything were all jumbled up. They helped me solve a technical snafu. And I was like, that's amazing. Let me give you an hour of my time. Right. And I think there are advisors and mentors and investors out there. So if someone introduces you to someone, that's another thing about relationships. You don't then go cut the person who introduced you out. You must make sure, this Asian way, I think, you must make sure that if the relationship continues to develop, you update the person that introduced you in the first place, because that is showing gratitude. And that's not just saying like, oh, hi, every time I need a favor, I'm going to ask you for an intro. The other thing as well is if you have an advisor or unofficial advisor or friends, you want to incentivize them to help you keep building. You can't just say like, hi, everyone, let's just continue getting free work, free dinner, free coffee, free advice out of you. You must show that you're having reciprocity to the relationship. Another good way to meet investors is if you're working really hard on your pitch deck and your traction and you have gotten into an accelerator or a pitch competition. I've judged so many of those. I just did one for the U.S. consulate for Select USA, and it was great. Got to listen to the last 10 and pick the winner who goes off to the U.S. and gets access to investments, network, intros, and actually, even getting into the finals, you get to meet a lot of like-minded peers and entrepreneurs. You get to meet the judges. Some of those judges might be investors. Like I might be one. I might be an advisor. And that's a good way to meet. So it's then the onus is on you to keep in touch with the investor, but not in an annoying way. So another thing is don't start spamming investors. Don't be like, here's my deck. Here's another 50 pages for you to read. We're busy people. So I think one of the things that are important about relationships is you respect one another's time. And when Ashley asked me to be on her podcast, I'm like, oh my gosh, amazing. Because I love this past, greater part of an hour we're going to spend together, every minute of it. And she not only said, oh, let me help you with your setup. She got me my ring light. I'm like, wow, so this is an example of reciprocity. We're not just sitting there being like, hi, be on my podcast. I'm just trying to show people that this is, there's a give and take. And then when it comes to keeping that investor relationship, if they've invested in your round, then you owe them quarterly. If not quarterly, then at least annual updates. Yeah. You can't suddenly go radio silent and then say like, oh, can you now invest in my next round? It's about investor relations. So beyond fundraising, the long-term thing is about IR, meaning investor relations, business development, and partnerships. When people see that you're a person with accountability who says, I will do this, shows up to do that, then that will continue to burnish your reputation. More people want to work with you. Yeah. You'll attract more revenue, you'll attract more partners, you'll attract more investors, because life is too short to do things the wrong way. And you can alienate a lot of investors, partners, people if you're just being just
go cold,
for lack of a better word, flaky and not focused. So you need to be focused. You need to put the relationship first. You need to check in on people, how they're doing. Investors are also advisors, and not just people with pocketbooks and they're like, hi, let me write you a check. You need to say how are you doing? Merry Christmas. So one of my portfolio companies, Olivex, which I helped him for IPO, ICO. And Animoca had put me on their advisory board, and I was just so, and I think Animoca is another private portfolio of mine, which I really love. The founder, Yatsu. A lot of people who are my friends And like you said, likability, I'll have invested in their companies. We might do co-investments together. I meet be in some of their access funds. I'm in my friend's Salesforce Mafia fund as an LP, right? For example, I get to look at cool tech. And one of the things that we kind of keep wanting to do is pay it forward. So, Christmas, we'll send out like holiday letters. So my portfolio company, I was saying, Keith of Olivex, every year without fail, he sends me like a birthday card, a Christmas card, even if like it didn't get there, an e-card. It's just like, hi, how are you? And I remember you and I, when we met during, for the first time IRL after a few years, we were saying like, oh, let's go eat crab together. Yay. Like, it's just, again, what you said before, it's about that human touch. Investors are people too. Entrepreneurs, investors, creators, we're all people. We're not just there to just perform as robots at will. And I think that it's all about continuous relationship building and strengthening that relationship, and in so doing, your reputation.
Absolutely. And it's a mindset that everybody shall not just adopt, but keep developing going forward. Because it's not, I think for in general, and again, of course, that's a generalization, but for women, it's easier to understand what this relationship building and maintaining is about. For a lot of men, sometimes it takes a bit of getting used to. And again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but in general, there are some of those traits and tendencies, I'd say. And that mindset that, wherever you are, whatever it is you are doing, it is humans first. Right now, a couple of tech companies that we're working with, their whole focus for 2026 strategy, because they plan typically 3 years ahead, is not customer centricity, but human centricity. How do I put a human, be it a consumer, be it my own employee, be it some other stakeholders like investors or government or whatever? How do I put human in every decision of the business? How do I put human in the center of all that? Not a consumer, not a product, not a customer, but a human. And I think another kind of an easy and simple example is I'm renting out some of my property here in Hong Kong out. And we're working with this agent already for a couple of years. And every time she successfully rents out our property, my husband and I would get her a nice champagne and a little like hamper basket. And we just say, well, thank you so very much. It's such a pleasure working with you. And every single time without a fail, she says, you can't imagine how nice and pleasant that is, because we're working with people, both helping them rent properties and rent out their properties or even sell them. But we very rarely, are you ready for this? Get even a simple thank you. Not even a physical good. She says very often they don't even get a thank you, because people just think you are doing your job, right? So that's your job to do. And then they say, okay, so it's very transactional. So, and she remembers, and for her it's very kind of important, because she feels that, okay, well, you view me as a human, and you are, even if it's not a gift, if it's just a thank you, but it's a heartfelt connection, it just goes beyond transaction, and it goes and expands your also options and opportunities. So guys, beyond whatever you are investing in, whether or not you're raising money for your business, but generally in life, in business today, remain human and focus on that. And I think this is also a beautiful bridge to our next question.
Very true.
On women. I know you are a fantastically successful, obviously, woman and entrepreneur, just beyond woman, but let's focus on the gender side of it. I know that you've been Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year, the finalist, a Peer Entrepreneur of the Year, the winner, CMO Asia Woman Super Achiever, winner, a World of Women WOW Awards finalist for Web3 for Good, and a lot more. In the past, I would say 3, 4, 5 years, especially with the Me Too movement, we see a lot of discussions around the world about the role of women, about that changing, also self-defined role that women are taking at work and at home. But here in Asia, a lot of those voices are muted. So very rarely we have successful women here in Asia actually arriving in the spotlight and shining in the spotlight. So what do you think is the state of affairs of women entrepreneurs here in Asia? What has been your experience doing business in Asia? Do you see any particular challenges or any particular enablers that help you being successful?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that again, because I think one of the best ways that we can change the paradigm, and this, I see you doing it already, is we need to lean into becoming role models. You know, you were just talking, for example, about one of your traditional investments. I know you're an investor, and and I'm also a real estate investor, and we were talking about real estate investments the other day, and I think the other thing that women tend to do, we're really good at what you mentioned before. We're good at relationships, but we're not good at advocating for ourselves. What I think right now, what we're really lacking a dearth of, before I used to say, hey, there are not enough women in tech. And I said, there are not enough women investors. You know what? Right now, for AI companies, it's even worse. And also for blockchain and Web3 companies, less than 5% of the founders are women. And that's a travesty, because even if we were to fund all the women, that's like 95% of those startups, there's male co-founders. I was actually judging, and I gave a kind of a harsh I gave some great positive feedback, but also there's a startup that wants to go global, and I said, hey, I'm just looking at your management team. There's no women on it. And they said, oh, we have a woman who's our graphic designer or something. And I'm like, oh, okay. And we have a women advisor. I'm like, you need to change that. You're not going to be a world-class company if you don't have a woman, at least several women sitting in your C-suite. You can't have like even one woman, only like a token woman. I don't think that's enough, because we as women, last I checked, we make up 50 to 51% of the population of the world. So we need to be represented. And also, I mean, if you're existing on this earth, there's a very good chance that a woman gave birth to you. So we give birth to 100% of the population. We can't just sit there being like, okay, no seat at the table. And then I'm really glad you asked that, because one of the things I talk about in terms of metaphors and tables is, I'm sitting at my little table, you're sitting at your little table. If the big boys or the other folks don't want to give you a seat at their table, screw that. I'm not going to say the other word. Just make your own table, build your own table, build an eco-friendly table. I was going to say, chop down a sustainable forest, but, just make a table out of sustainable materials, pull up a chair at the table, pull up your friends to take seats at your table, make a freaking infinite table, and we all have seats at that table. So I think there need to be more of us women, not just as entrepreneurs and investors and in tech and in Web3 and AI, but on boards. We need to sit there and represent, take power positions. And the other thing I think that's stacked against us women in Asia, for sure, I think also in the rest of the world, in different parts of the world where it's kind of like a little bit more patriarchal history, is that we're expected to be everybody's nurturers. Sometimes we forget to take care of ourselves, our own self-care. Right. And also we need to advocate for ourselves. If we're not getting, just because I can doesn't mean I should go sit there and do like free advisory work for everyone and just be like, oh, are you a startup? You need money? Here's some money. Like, that's not how it goes. Right. It's just, we need to be respected as human beings. And because we're women, sometimes I feel like the bar is set even higher for us. And we have to, achieve more for people to take us seriously. Sometimes when I say things in a very, purposeful, firm tone, then people say like, oh, wow, like, that's Jen just being so aggressive and like rude. But actually, I feel like I am being very straightforward. If it was a man saying sometimes the same thing I'm saying, they'll be like, wow, that person is showing such good leadership quality and being very direct. So I think as sort of role models for ourselves and for our peers and for our next gen and for next gen, and we are next gen already, we need to lean into our roles more as leaders, change makers. And also, if, for example, like I wanted to see if you were here. Actually, I wanted you to be on one of my upcoming panels for WOW Summit. And then I'm speaking at different conferences. But the next time I see another manel, meaning a man only panel, that's a travesty. That's like a male only dialogue with no women in it. And then sometimes they're like, oh, that's great. You should join the panel and you should be our moderator. And I'm like, well, I can moderate and also be a panel member. I don't want to just sit there and just moderate men having a discussion, because
go to panel,
right, or look pretty and be like, oh, okay, here's the mic. It's your turn to speak. Oh, let me guide the conversation. That's fine. You and I were great moderators, but we also deserve to have our voices heard, to have our ideas heard, to be able to work on our ideas. So that's why I say, like, any company I see that is like, not diverse, that I see them hurtling towards groupthink. I see them just creating this more of a digital divide, more of a wealth divide. And I see it as a huge red flag. Like, if there's like, you're sometimes like, wow, it's just very hard to find qualified women. I'm like, sorry, I'm sitting in front of you. There's another one I can recommend friends. Like, what do you mean? There's like, it's not like we're all unicorns. Like we exist. So, I mean, I see you standing in front of me, Ashley. I would love to recommend you for board positions on some of my portfolio companies. I mean, they need to understand. You can't just sit there and be like, hello, we are just, some of us guys were just, and I was just paid the ultimate compliment by one of the portfolio companies, dev teams. They were like, Jen, you've always been one of the guys. And I'm like, I take that as a huge compliment. I said back to them, and you've always been one of the girls for me, because it's again, like, if you want, and the other thing too is that there are a lot of funds now and a lot of next gen wealth. People have sons and daughters.
Yeah.
There are people running family offices who are also women. So you can't just say like, I am looking for, white male investors over age 50 only. You can't, it's not like that anymore. So I'm so glad you opened up that can of worms. I think as women, the cards are still a little bit stacked against us. We have to prove ourselves more. But then I say, like, let's be fearless. Let's go do that. And that's why I'm so happy you're giving me a voice on your podcast. I want to come back again and again and talk about that.
Let's do that. And let's also become those role models. Not waiting for somebody to become, but build your personal brand. Personal brand is about how you show up online consistently in your professional setup. Talk about it. Share your best tips. Build that community. Have that voice. Do not hide, as you said, right? Do not just feel that, I'm not qualified enough. You are enough to do that and build your community. There will be people that are going through that journey that you've been taking, but maybe a few years behind, and you will be, again, guiding and leading, and later on it will evolve into something beautiful. So I would encourage all women to also, get the seat at the table, as you said, being fearless, doing all that, but also if you're succeeding or if you're building things, you're in the process, put that spotlight, accept that spotlight. And expand it. So what would be your advice before we move to the last topic for today? What would be your advice for women that are aspiring entrepreneurs or maybe aspiring investors also across Asia today? What would you say they should do?
My advice, and I want to actually address one of the other things we were talking about Web3, AI, and blockchain, be all ones. Jump in with both feet. Because what do you have to lose? Literally, Ashley, you just said it right now yourself. It's like, we need to be our own role models. We can't sit there saying like, let me wait before I think a lot of, in medieval times, people were like, I'm waiting for a prince to come rescue me.
Yeah, no.
And now it's like, are you waiting for a queen to be like, if you have your crown, take it, wear your crown or wear your headphones or wear your, just put on your role. And, take responsibility for your life. We only have one life. Use that time wisely. Just do it. And the other thing is lean into things that you're scared of. For me, I started investing in AI and avatars and Web3 and blockchain. As I mentioned, one of my IPO exits became a listed Web3 company a few years after the IPO. So then that did some ICOs, right? So I got into crypto, Web3, blockchain kind of accidentally. But then there's none of us. A lot of people are like, I'm Web3 native. No one is Web3 native unless you were born on the blockchain. You're not Web3 native. There's time to go in. So if you're like, wow, AI, Web3, blockchain, those are the future, then lean into that future. Don't go for the safe bets. Go and take that journey. Learn. Because one of the things I realized that I've been able to do as both an entrepreneur investor, reviewing business text, reviewing strategy, is a constant learning growth process. So, and I think there's so many exciting things about, Web3 and blockchain, that transparency, being able to build in public, AI, how that's connecting, there's the automation in your daily lives. I loved how Ashley, you just gave us a peek too. I always look 3 to 5 years ahead. And the kinds of investments we're making, we're talking about sustainability into the future, is making sure that we're investing in next gen into the great grandchildren of our generation, or the human race, like whether it is that we're like living in space or producing in space, have salvaged Earth, whatever that might be. So, and we are all responsible. We're all stakeholders in our present and our future, right? So I think I would urge women and entrepreneurs and aspiring investors, start small, but take those steps. If you're not an investor yet, be an angel investor. If you're not a entrepreneur yet, think of an idea, link up with others. You don't have to be a solo founder. Try it out. The worst you can do is fail and learn from it, right? And so that's kind of my little tip. I hope that I can sort of touch upon. I know we'll have exciting AI, Web3, and blockchain combos later because there's so much going on with the meme coin space, the NFT space, the metaverse space. But I know we are pretty much short on time. But I would say lean into those new frontiers.
Absolutely.
Don't go for just the old, true and tried stuff.
Absolutely.
But of course, you want to balance your portfolio. So obviously, you do want to invest in some physical assets like real estate. I think that is very savvy. You do want to invest in fund managers. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. Yeah. I always say also Elon Musk and other famous entrepreneurs, they're not saying like, oh, all of my net worth is in Tesla stock. They will put their money in other projects and ventures and other investors as well. So you want to make sure you diversify even as you're going after your dream and passion.
Absolutely. And after you've secured some of the more traditional investments, as you said, the new age things are in front of us. So the last question for today will be exactly about the future. Web3 and AI are the two topics where you are quite savvy. As you said, it was self-taught. It was scary to jump into something like that, to understand how to invest and how to navigate this whole environment. So Web3 is a term that encompasses a new era of the internet, right? So it includes many things like blockchain and cryptocurrencies, of course. It includes the new version of the internet, games, extended reality, etc. So how do you think these technologies influence the world, influence Asia, and why shall they be invested in? How do you pick your projects as well?
Well, everything, you're like an expert in these amazing questions. My goodness. So I think there's actually going to be a lot of cross pollination. You're right. Web3 isn't just one thing. It isn't just, Bitcoin, Ethereum. It is a multitude of cryptocurrencies. At the center of it is a DeFi, meaning decentralized finance. And then this idea of decentralization and also ownership. There's this saying that we talk about too, that people, there's rapidly new ideas of decentralized ownership, digital identity. One of the people asked me before, why are you so into NFTs? And I said, well, NFTs are just passports into the best communities and metaverses. There's different utility and use cases, but there's some of them are also like tied into gaming and communities also tied into each other. Because what people don't understand too is that gamification really leads to education and stickiness of communities. A lot of things that we do now are actually gamified. People feel like, wow, I feel a rush from, getting that like on social media. And if you think about it, gamification, automation, AI, a lot of that is all tied in together. I actually think because people are like, oh, Web3 is the new thing. Actually, it's been here for a while. And Web 2 and Web 1 and everything has been here for a while. So I like to say my equation is Web 2 plus Web 3 is Web 5. We're actually in the middle of Web 5 and beyond right now. And one of the reasons why I say that is because there's a way of doing business before. People called it like sort of the Web 2 or the Web 0 mentality where you have solid physical foundation. You see each other IRL, everything. And nowadays, like if you think about it, Zoom is like a teleportation chamber. I Zoomed with you the other day. I had a video call with you the other day. Now we're doing live streaming. All of this is just, new, I call it teleportation chambers, new methods of communicating. Sometimes we have our avatars, our emojis. Sometimes people are speaking in emoji, right? And I think one of the reasons why we have all this coming to the forefront is that there's going to be a consolidation in the space. So we do Web3 business. That's the future. With Web 2 sensibilities, because you can't just be in Web 3. There was actually a lot of sort of wild West mentality, lack of accountability and transparency. Even though everything is transparent in the blockchain, you'd have people like, obviously the FTX debacle, or there's other sort of companies that have imploded, and there's what we call in the other space like rug pulls, where and then there's something I always tell people is DYOR, do your own research, right? That means do your diligence. DYOR. Not your keys, not your wallet. So make sure for example, if you've co-invested with someone, you have their contact info, you have their, and you can't just be like, I'm just doing it because my friends are. You have to have, responsibility to yourself, your portfolio, and whoever it is you're supporting. Because again, it's like, it's all about your reputation. And at the end of the day, if you're not doing things in a very mindful way, or if you're doing things in a very just slipshod, however way, wild west, you can have wild west for some things, but when it comes down to actually doing proper business, you still need to have things, signed and dotted. You need to make sure, the technology is solid foundation. You can't just say like, again, it's an idea. We are here to, launch a coin for, and the other thing is, you were saying before about market and product market fit. Is there a market? And sometimes people come to me and say like, oh, I want to tokenize. And I'm like, why? What is the problem you're trying to solve? And they're like, oh, I just want to list a coin because, meme coins are the thing now. And I'm like, that's the other danger. For all the space, it's here to stay. So don't go chasing fads and saying like, oh, me too. Or just because by the time you chase that fad, it will be over. The other thing I would also caution people is, you might want to trade a little bit of money for fun. You want to keep some of, obviously, if you're younger, you can keep a little higher percentage of your like maybe 20 to 30% in venture capital, private equity, pre-public companies, beyond, stocks and bonds and properties. You have a good asset allocation. You might want to keep some in crypto, but you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. So when I see people saying like, oh, I sold off like, my car to buy an NFT. I'm like, I'm not sure that's like the best use of your money. And the other thing is, when people think that they can, the beauty of Web3 is that it's right equalizer. A lot of people can get really rich really quick and trade, but that doesn't mean that's everyone. That 16-year-old kid, they might trade better than you. That hedge fund manager, they might trade better than you. So what I always say is know your wheelhouse, know what you're good at. You can't just, and then read more about it. Read like, which wallet should I use? Which contract, how do I investigate, whether someone's social media following is real? How do I investigate whether that person has a track record? And the other thing is if someone is not doxxed, meaning their identity is revealed, or they have to be doxxed to some extent as then they have a reputation. They can't have no reputation because you're like, all of us are not doxxed. Then that's actually not good because I like to tell everyone I was doxxed, meaning everyone knew who I was before the advent of Web3. So these are all important things to remember as we enter that, or not enter, continue to build in that space. And to also remember again, collaboration is the new competition. So always be open to those new ideas, to cross-pollinate, make those partnerships, but also don't be afraid to curate. If something's not working, cut it away, whether it's that relationship, whether it's a non-performing, part of the business, like, or that strategy. Don't be afraid to curate, because we can't just, sit there just, FOMOing, meaning fear of missing out on everything, and just, another bad strategy for investing or being an entrepreneur is just spreading yourself thin and just throwing everything at everything. And so you have to keep that focus. So I hope I was able to touch a little bit. I would love to expound more on the intricacies of Web3 and AI and what's in the future, but I think it's really exciting and we can just devote a whole episode to it.
Absolutely. When it comes to Web3, and especially when we deep dive and look at the center of it all, it's all about this decentralized system, and ultimately it supposed to provide us more security and more ownership, right? But in reality, over the past, let's say 5 years, we've seen a lot of shady business there. Why? Because the fact that it is secure and kind of untraceable and whatnot, of course it attracts certain type of enterprises and businesses, and some of them are, illegal as well. And there's a lot of scammers. And also people, I believe this is so important, at this stage, at this age, need to take ownership, need to take responsibility over their data, over their investments, over their education as well. Just a couple of days ago, I was reading South China Morning Post, one of our regional newspapers, and they said a Hong Konger, actually a lady, and she was just in her early 40s, lost 7.1 million Hong Kong dollars, which is nearly 800,000 US dollars in cryptocurrency scams. She just basically somebody approached her on Instagram and said, "Hey guys, I'm an investor," and she transferred. I'm just looking at the news. She transferred like 15 designated bank accounts. She made those transactions, lost the money. I mean, how is this still possible today? Because people are not educated. They are not educated to what does actually, what is secure, what is safe, whether you trust this person, you verify. And for the longest time, this responsibility was on somebody else. Oh, my personal data, I don't need to care for it. Well, the government keeps my personal data safe, or whoever else keeps my personal data safe. But right now, your personal data is out there. You need to monitor those permissions every time you join an app. every time you subscribe to a game or whatnot. You need to read, you need to take ownership, you need to delete, you need to allow or disallow the tracking. It's your responsibility. Previously,
That's right.
or even today, even in 2024, if I go to the bank, let's imagine HSBC, and I stick my card, withdraw cash, but then I walk away and the person after me gets my cash. So basically, I have completed transaction but forgot cash in the ATM machine. What happens? A lot of people don't know, but the bank is supposed to give you the money back because they have not organized a secure thing. So literally, you yourself were careless and the bank sends you the money back. But this is not going to happen if it is blockchain. You need to own your whole process. So basically take that ownership, educate yourself continuously, and get serious. But of course, there are opportunities in the whole Web3 space, as well as, of course, AI. Jen, we are going to finish in just one moment, but do you have a few words on AI? Because it's such a hot topic, and I know that you are investing also in a lot of businesses in that space. How do you choose your projects? What are some of the specific applications of AI that are the most exciting ones to you when it comes to the global or here in Asia?
Well, I think one of the reasons I think AI is so important is because there's actually been automation and some amount of AI going on behind the scenes for a long time, whether it's, from an algorithm, whether it's from actual, people were like looking at generative AI, MML, like just so many, not just like ChatGPT, but just a huge proliferation of AI. So to ignore it would be to say like, I'm putting on blinders, I am, cutting myself off to all technology. And even people like, AI is, I'm sure some people have like, Amazon Echo, we have Siri on our phones. I mean, this is all AI, right? And so, I think when it comes to what I look for in AI, I look for something again that solves a problem. Sometimes like there's someone who's like, oh, I have this app and they might send it to me and, unsolicited on LinkedIn or somewhere, whatever. It's a cold solicitation. I have this app that, organizes my app, that organizes another app and then indexes your app. And I'm just like, I'm so sorry. There's like no use case for that. Like, what is it? Like, I didn't even bother to respond because I'm just like, is there even a market for that? Like maybe it's like someone with like a lot of apps on their phone, but at that point you just delete the apps you're not using, or it's not like such a pressing, issue or obstacle that people are like, oh, so, for example, one of the companies that is a recent portfolio company of mine, or there's actually a few, but there was one that uses like a chat interface so that people can feel like they are, with, there's avatar technology invested in, which I think is very interesting because for that particular one, Sega co-invested. That was a company called I don't know that I think they're partnering with a lot right now. But it was a company called AKA Virtual, right? And the founder had previously raised like a few $100 million for his previous gaming startup. And I thought, oh wow, I'm going to bet on this exited entrepreneur again. But one of the reasons why I liked it is because avatar technology is really great. Like later on, if you and I are very tired, we can just have our avatars, film our podcast in advance. It can stream when it's set to stream. You and I can be sipping mocktails in, on a beach somewhere. And we can, so I think that is very interesting. There's another one I think is very interesting that, is a portfolio company, and it's, a way to provide companionship and loneliness, right? Because I think AI and chatbots, it's a good way, especially with, elderly, and to ward off like mental illness and dementia and other things. And the other thing I think is interesting about language. I lost my, grandmother. I have memories with her and everything. I think AI is a way to kind of, AI has another meaning in Chinese, which we know, ai, which means love. I feel like AI can be a way to immortalize our humanity. Because that is a way to, like later on, if we have memories of our loved ones or ways, patterns they talk, maybe we can create a
digital twin.
Exactly, a digital twin, and be able to pass on history to the next generation. There was another company I supported in the past when I had my beauty products, and they did perfume, and they did holograms of some of the last World War II and rape of Nanking survivors, so that they could preserve the history. And that was in conjunction with museums, including Museum of the Bible, and just Holocaust Memorial and everything. And I thought these are, again, like you mentioned before, human tech. We have to make sure the AI, the love comes into the tech. And then finally, this other one, which I was telling you about, which was like, search engine connecting the best investors and startups together. So we can kind of take the sort of guesswork out of it and make sure that, it's just very targeted. The algorithm's getting changed and everything, trained is to make sure, and that one's called Globalify. One of the reasons why I think it's really important is a lot of companies now are globalizing and amplifying. And one of the ways we do that is with AI. And so that way, instead of one person, you can just go faster and faster and faster. But the purpose for that is for good. So we can get better entrepreneurs funded faster. We can get angel investors, better companies faster. And it's almost like, matchmaking. So when I saw that about our portfolio company just developing that, I was just like, wow, this is really, this is actually a good thing. So I think, and as I mentioned before, I think we're going to see good content will still be king. Sometimes you see AI generated content, you're like, wow, that's a robotic voice. I can tell this is like a AI video. It's like, it still needs that human touch. And when you said we have to inject humans and everything, I think that's actually the point. We need to make sure, how do we have that harmony between human AI so that there is checks and balances? Like if you have a fund that's run purely on an algorithm, look out, Lunaterra, right? Spiraling down. But then if you're also like all like human, then you're going to have amplification of human error. So you have to have them work in tandem. And I think, we can talk more about AI in the future, but I think that along with the transparency now of people having, there's a public ledger. Final tip I have for people is that if you do invest in cryptocurrencies, you can keep some money on exchange or in banks or or in custodians and everything. But I always like to keep not a lot, sorry. I like to keep a good amount on my hard wallet.
Yeah.
Because that's like a hard wallet. You can think of it as like a vault, a safe, but it's like how you wouldn't just, throw out your passwords everywhere. You won't just see, because the danger of keeping it on a centralized thing is if there's like, for example, we saw before there was bank runs or like outages or breaches of security. You want to make sure that you are not putting all your eggs in one basket. So I would invest in a ledger or a wallet, a hard wallet. So that way, and then that way, if you're signing a digital transaction, then there's like a few more steps before you're just like, oh, I just clicked sign. Oh no, I just got, you don't want that to happen. And that poor woman that you just talked about, I mean, she should have done test amounts. She should have did her diligence around this person who's like, was it even a person? Was it a bot on Instagram? It just sounds like a horrible, I whenever I hear of people falling victim to scams, it makes me my blood boils. So, thank you for, it is a great example of what not to do.
Yeah, it is a great example of what not to do. And we're going to end today's very insightful talk on a very personal note. Beyond investment and being an entrepreneur, you are also a creator, obviously also a business influencer, but creator in a more artistic manner. You are beyond all that, a concert pianist, an internationally award-winning concert pianist, I must say. So before you play for us, and I hope that you can delight us just for a few moments with your performance, can you tell me how does music influence your life and maybe business decisions? Do you think differently because you have this musical component, that creative component in your life?
Oh, wow. Okay. First of all, Ashley, you're just amazing because I've never been so at ease, and so I feel vulnerable too, revealing everything in your podcast. So I feel like music for me is my mental health outlet. So I think it's very important. Like during the pandemic, I played for a lot of people. I played in Clubhouse. I played in Twitter. I did concerts for thousands of people. I won one of the Chopin competitions. I got the Polish Consulate Award for it. And one of the reasons why I returned to my music roots, because I quit piano more than a decade ago. And one of the reasons why I did that is because it helped my soul. It really speaks to me. And sometimes when I need to decompress, I go and play some music. But I notice it also helps other people relieve stress too. And I also got an email and letters from people during the pandemic saying, oh, you played for every day, 300 days straight. And when I was in lockdown, I would look forward to your concerts. And one person even said, you were the reason why I didn't jump. And I'm like, wow, that's really, and then one of the first NFTs I did was for an influencer to give to his partner as a keepsake, because they unplugged him right after I finished playing a song to him. And I played for every day in his ICU room. So my music was, and some of us talking through audio were some of the last things he heard. So I think music is so poignant. It's art, culture, the humanities, that's what keeps us human.
Thanks for joining me for this interesting conversation with Jennifer Cheng-Lo. Stay tuned, of course, for even more Ashley's Digital China episodes to come. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to receive notifications first. See you soon!